All right, everybody, welcome into KBO Chats Live. I'm Sam Pasco alongside Eric Holterman, and we are breaking down the best KBO picks tonight. Before we begin, we have some power rankings. But before we begin that, Eric, how you feeling right now? Good to see you back in the regular studio there.
Yep, no more rustic wood walls, just your basic Chicago apartment white walls. Crazy time to come back to vacation right on MLB deadline day. Quite a busy day for us at RotoWire on the baseball wire today, and thankfully not even crazier. We didn't see the entire KBO shut down, even though we might be close. There was a Futures League player for the Hanwha Eagles did test positive for COVID-19. But everything I've seen is that the league's still on for now. We're as close to cancellation as we've been. I think we've said that for the past week or two, but we're not there yet. As we know, if a player on an active roster tests positive, they're going to pause the whole week for 3 weeks. At least that was the plan heading into the year. But fingers crossed that isn't going to happen, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. I know we saw COVID cases in South Korea on the rise past a week or so. I believe past couple days it's actually been declining under 300 past 2 days. So that's good. Hopefully we'll see some baseball being played, and that's a plan right now because we have some tight playoff races. Some very fun stuff to get into here. So diving into the power rankings at first, I want to break down each team here in pairs of two. So first up, you got the Kiwoom Heroes and the NC Dinos. I got a bone to pick with you, Eric. The Dinos, they seem to have their mojo back. Yes, it was against the Wyverns, but you still have them at number 2 and not at their rightful place at number 1. What is going on here with the Dinos and Heroes?
Yeah, I did move them back up one spot. The Heroes claimed that top spot a couple weeks ago. I haven't seen quite enough from the Dinos to reclaim it. They did get outplayed pretty considerably. If you look at a slightly longer stretch, over the month of August, the Heroes went 17-9, while the Dinos were just 11-12. So Dinos really haven't looked like the top spot over an extended period. If you zoom in on just this past week, they did. But again, 4 of their 5 wins came against the Wyverns and Eagles. But they definitely have a chance to prove that they're the best team in the league again this week, because they faced the Heroes for 2 games to kick things off, and then they faced the Twins, who we'll get to in a second. So it's quite a tough stretch for them. Certainly good for Dinos fans to see them entering that stretch on their first real positive run in quite some time. Again, it's very small gap between them and the Heroes. And if I were to make these power rankings 2 days from now, there's a very good chance the Dinos take both games from the Heroes and are back on top.
Yes, for sure. Sung Bung Na leading that charge, as you noted there, homering 5 times last week. Quite impressive from the backstop there. As always, this is KBO Chats Live, in case you're just tuning in. Josh, welcome to the show. Yeah, that's right, the KBO show here. So one last thing with the Heroes. They are now 1.5 games back of that first place spot. Is there anything you see from their schedule, anything specifically they need to improve to really take that number 1 spot also in the standings in terms of record?
They could still take a step forward offensively. It's still somewhat surprisingly just the 5th best offense according to runs per game. And they haven't gotten elite performances from someone like Addison Russell. Nothing wrong with what he's doing, but it's an OPS of 797, which is quite fine for a shortstop, but not anything close to one of the best foreign hitters in the league. So if he takes a step forward, that makes them even scarier than they are. But their pitching staff is deep. They're still without Eric Jokic, but it doesn't seem like he'll be out that much longer. He recently resumed throwing over the weekend, seemingly ahead of schedule. He has a bit of a shoulder issue, but they said he wasn't going to throw for 2 weeks originally, but he's back throwing just 1 week later. So that's certainly a positive sign for them. It doesn't seem like they need him the way that things have been going lately. But once he gets back, when they've got him and Brigham healthy at the same time, if they can ever manage that for more than a couple games, it's a very scary top of the rotation, good bullpen, and a good lineup. Not a whole lot of holes, just maybe not quite the elite lineup you would expect to see from a team that I'd have ranked top in these standings.
Yeah, so you got the Heroes at number one and the NC Dinos at two. Moving down, we see the LG Twins moving up one place to third place, and the KT Wiz at fourth. And boy, the Wiz, they've fallen from number two down to four. And they were even shut out last week by LG in one of their games. What's going on with this Wiz team as kind of a cusp borderline playoff team?
Yeah, it's too bad. They rewarded my faith in them by going just 2-4. Some decently tough teams on the schedule, the Heroes and Twins, and then the Tigers are still at least a bubble team. But given the way the Wiz have been playing over quite an extended period, you would have thought they'd do better than that. Just I would consider it just a blip for now, and they've got a chance to charge right on back, given that their next five come against the Giants and Wyverns. But they'll need a good run in those because they have the Heroes, Bears, and Dinos coming up in three straight series starting this coming weekend. So they really need to sort things out against the bad teams, given that they just struggled against some of the good ones.
And when you play the bad teams, you get that mojo back, and that's just what the doctor ordered. And it looks like the Wiz could use some of that now, because the LG Twins, that actually doesn't apply to them because they were 1-3 against the Eagles and Lions not that long ago, but now they're on a 4-game winning streak against the Wiz and Bears. Now, this Twins team, have you seen them surge now as legitimate contenders?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, remember, this was one of the better teams. Some people had them as the best team in the league early before they went on a pretty extended slump. So this isn't an entirely new level of performance from them. And it's really been the pitching staff that's been key. Like I noted there, over their last 17 games, they've allowed just 3.5 runs per game. That would be good for easily the best by well over a run if they'd been able to keep that up all year. The best pitching staff in the league right now is the Heroes, who allow 4.7 runs per game, just to get a sense of how strong that stretch is. And most of their starters are pitching as well as ever right now. And Roberto Ramos is hitting as well as he's supposed to. So when you got those things going, I think they're not at all far behind the Heroes and Dinos. There's every chance they could even be top if they were able to, say, sweep the Dinos in the midweek here.
Yeah, one thing I've seen with them is that emergence of that pitching staff, but specifically Casey Kelly. I think his last 39 innings, he's been lights out. I know he was a guy, and even Tyler Wilson was someone we didn't seriously look at as an impact import starter. Are those two guys now, Wilson and Kelly, getting closer to that Jokic level of dominance and, someone that this team can rely on going into a playoff series?
Yeah, I think it's as up there with some of the better 1-2 punches in the league. Wilson has allowed 4 and 5 earned runs in 2 of his last 3, although his strikeout and walk numbers have actually been pretty good. And Casey Kelly he hasn't had a blow up in a long time. I guess 2 starts ago he allowed 4 runs, but over an extended stretch, it's an ERA below 3. I'm not sure if either of them has had a stretch that competes with the likes of Dan Straley or Raul Alcantara's best stretches. But in that second tier, I think they're both capable of being that. I mean, they both were that last year. Casey Kelly had a 2.55 ERA last season. Wilson had a 2.92. So these are guys who are capable of some of the strongest performances in the league, and they're getting a lot closer to that. So when you get those two guys going, which is something they really hadn't had early in the year, even when they were playing better, it's kind of a new look Twins team when they have that elite starting pitching to go along with a lineup led by Roberto Ramos and Hyun-Soo Kim, and actually quite a deep unit that's got a number of guys playing well lately.
Yeah, we'll see how they progress throughout this week here. Moving down the power rankings, we have the Doosan Bears, the Lotte Giants, and I'll extend this one to the Kia Tigers because I really thought that you might have my Tigers a little higher, not all the way down there at 7. I mean, they have 4 wins in their last 7, which is quite an improvement for them considering that 5-game losing streak they were just on. Why are they behind both the Bears and the Giants?
Yeah, they've played pretty similarly to both those teams lately. But the real worry with the Tigers is that they were a team that was carried by their pitching staff. They were even top in the league not too long ago, despite having a bottom third or at least bottom half offense. But suddenly they have the 6th best pitching staff in the league. Suddenly they're a bottom half team in both runs scored and runs allowed, which is not a formula for playoff success. Just about everybody is struggling in their rotation except for Hyunjung Yang, who I think I mentioned as the DFS named to know for the third straight week because he's pitching absolutely like he's supposed to. 2.63 ERA and well over a strikeout per inning over his last 7 starts. But it's kind of just him. They have managed to play close to 500 ball lately, but that's just from some well-timed big offensive games. And I don't necessarily expect that to sustain, given that they really haven't had much of an offense for quite a while. And so they really need the likes of Aaron Brooks and Drew Gagnon to get back on track if they're to really make a playoff push.
That's fair. I'd say that's fair. But when we look up at the Giants, their only wins came against Hanwha and SK. They were swept in that 2-game miniseries, just 2 games, but against Kiwoom. What makes them deserve that 6th spot and maintaining that 6th spot above the Tigers?
Well, suddenly they're the pitching first bubble team. They've got the 3rd best pitching staff in terms of runs allowed per game this season. It's not just Dan Straley. Sewung Park, who we'll get to later, has been quite solid for quite a long time. The gap between them is quite small. I think you could easily say that the Tigers might be a more talented team. They've got more interesting starters in the rotation. They've got Preston Tucker, who's better than anything the Giants have. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Tigers move back ahead over the stretch run. I guess maybe just still a little bit worried about the Tigers given their 5-game losing streak last week. So it was going to take more than a 500 week for me to move them back ahead, but the gap's pretty small.
Well, they got Aaron Brooks going for them tonight. That is the Kia Tigers. So we'll talk about him in a bit. We'll see if maybe that can change the Kia Tigers' poor pitching recently. Deucin Bears, not really much I have to say about them. Just kind of a 500 team now. Is that what we're kind of looking at? That bubble, win 1, lose 1 type team?
Yeah, I mean, for close to 40 games, they're more or less exactly a 500 team. I do expect them to be better than that when Chris Flexen eventually shows up, but there hasn't been any indication that that's about to happen. With him and Raul Alcantara, that's good enough to start a rotation, and Wonjun Choi has emerged as at least a decent number 3. Mediocre peripherals, but a 3.18 ERA and 8 starts. That can fall off a fair amount and have him still be a playable option. But just if they get into an extended series with one of the better teams, I just don't see them having much of a chance in the games that Alcantara and Flexen don't start. Even Choi, if he's their number 3 guy, is worse than the number 3s for a healthy Heroes and Dinos and Twins team. They're just going to need Choi to stay good. They're going to need Flexen to come back. If they get those things and they have 3 trustworthy starters, that lineup can win any game, and they even win their fair share of shootouts when the other guys are pitching. But it's pretty stale, at least until they get a second truly reliable starter in there.
Yeah, I've been hearing Flex is going to come back for what, a month now? I mean, we're waiting for this guy to come back, former New York Met. Hopefully he can return this rotation and help them, regain that dominance they saw earlier this season. So moving down, 8 Samsung Lions, 9 Wyverns, 10 Eagles. This group seems to stay the same. The Wyverns were interesting. Was it 2 weeks ago, and they were dropping double digits, like 3 or 4. Are they back to pretty much just being a standard bad team now?
Yeah, I did move them back above the Eagles. They've been slightly better than them over a recent stretch, but not by much. Neither of those teams is looking like one of the worst teams ever. It's just 2 standard, pretty bad teams. And given that the Wyverns have a bit more talent in the heart of the lineup and a bit more interesting, maybe a few more interesting starters in the rotation, though I guess with Chad Bell looking decent now for the Eagles, maybe that's not true. But there's still not much about either lineup or pitching staff on any given night. Occasionally, the heart of the Wyverns order will be interesting for fantasy purposes. Sometimes you'll get an interesting starter for one of the 2. But they're pretty clearly the dregs of the league at this point, and it's far too late for either of them to make a late comeback.
Yeah, and definitely for the Wyverns at least, they brought in Tyler White to kind of be in that audition role, see what was going to go on with him, looking with an eye looking towards 2021. Not happening. He's still hurt. But the Lions, they have Daniel Polka, another guy auditioning for 2021. Is there anything interesting with them right now? You still have them at 8. Run differential still not good. Is there any growth for them? Or are they still basically right there at the bottom of the league?
Yeah, I mean, Palka has 4 hits in his first 6 games and an OPS under 600, so not much there. Heyman Park, who's been their leadoff guy pretty frequently of late, is at least hitting for high average. They'll occasionally get a decent start from David Buchanan, but just not enough in their lineup. If Palka was suddenly amazing immediately upon his arrival, that might be enough for them to close the gap and get back into the race, but given that it doesn't look like he's that, I don't see them making a charge at this point.
That's fair. In case you're just joining in, this is KBO Chats Live. Barry, welcome in. A little late, but we are now breaking down the lineups, moving from power rankings, talking about the daily lineups. Hopefully another 5 games. Doesn't look like there's that much rain in the forecast, so should be good to go. First up, starting with the Deucin Bears taking on the Hanwha Eagles. Your guy, Alcantara, going for the Bears tonight against the Eagles. But Alcantara took his first L since May, his last time out. And Shi Huanzhong, when you look at his past 3 starts, he's played the Dinos, the Wiz, and the Lions. If you said which one of those teams did he have one good start against, it's not the Lions, it was the Wiz. So I'm not sure what really to make of him. What we're looking at in this matchup here, Eric?
Yeah, Shiwan Zhang was a guy I kind of liked at times this season as maybe a cheap DFS play because he doesn't necessarily have a good ERA, but he at least gets some strikeouts. But he hasn't been getting them lately. Over his last 4 starts, it's 10 strikeouts in 20 innings to go with 9 walks. The high walks are not a surprise at all. He's got a 11.7% walk rate on the season, but he's supposed to be, again, a high strikeout guy with some control issues. 22% strikeout rate on the season still, even after some low strikeout numbers recently. But when he's not striking out guys, there's kind of nothing there. And it's led to a couple blowouts in his last 3 starts. It's a 7.07 ERA and a 171 whip over his last 3, with, like you said, two weak outings where he failed to even go more than 4 innings and allowed 5 runs in both, and then 1 decent one in the middle there. Who knows if that even is really all that decent of a start when he only struck out 2. I don't see his recent performance being nearly enough to shut down, especially a lefty-heavy Bears lineup here. So I would expect plenty of runs for the Bears. I would recommend stacking their lineup. That was one of my top recommendations on tonight's cheat sheet. Jose Fernandez, Jaelo, Jaewon Kim, maybe even Ju-Wan Choi, they're 2 through 5 hitters. All good left-handed bats, and all would be interesting against Zhang here.
Yeah, when you look at that matchup there, that you get the lefty on righty matchup, it makes me think you're going to hit that over, but then Alcantara has been dominant for most of the year. Barry's agreeing with you here. But he is coming off that, maybe less than stellar start against Kia. 4 runs isn't horrible, but when you do it in 6 innings and you're Raul Alcantara, that could maybe be a sign of decline.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot about his year to date that we're worried about a start in which he gave up 4 runs. I mean, not good, but not terrible. But it was actually his first non-quality start in 14 starts. He had a stretch of 13 straight quality starts. But it's maybe been coming. I mean, he's been on a bit of a downward slope recently. It's 3 or more earned runs in 3 straight starts after giving up 2 or less in 7 in a row. So he's definitely not at that level where he was making a case as the best starter in the league. Although his strikeout to walk numbers are fine in that stretch. So his strikeouts are down. 18 strikeouts in 24 innings over his last 4 isn't great, but only 2 walks. So it's not like he's really fallen into trouble. But even this lesser version of Alcantara should be more than enough against the Eagles. Again, maybe 4 runs in 6 innings against the Tigers isn't what you expect. But when that's as bad as it gets, I don't think he's going to have much trouble here.
All right, so we like the Bears. And are you going to go with the over or under? Are you going to agree with Barry on that team total? Set at 9 right now, the overall total.
That's a pretty low number, which makes me think I'd be happy to go over that. I think the Bears could well get close to that themselves. And if Alcantara is more of a 2 or 3 earned run guy these days rather than a 0 or 1, I think we can pretty safely go over there. It's possible that we need a 10-0 Bears game to hit that over, but that doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility given their lineup and given John's struggles of late.
Yeah, the Bears have struggled though lately. Do want to note that at least that, like you talked about, 500 team, not quite sweeping dominant, but definitely a solid team that should be no match for the Eagles as they are just out of their league. Moving on, we got the Twins and the Wyverns now. Sung Jung Beck for the Wyverns, getting better. Let me clear our page here, but when you look at his stats, getting a little better past couple starts. Kind of the opposite of what we've seen of Alcantara. What are we thinking with this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it counts as getting a little better. He did only give up 1 earned run last time, but he failed to complete the 4th inning and he walked 5 batters. Tons of walks has been the story for him all year long. His strikeout rate of 18.4% is right about league average, but he's walking 17.6%. That's nearly double league average. Nowhere close to good enough. He's also giving up 2.2 homers per 9 innings, which is over double the league average. So when you walk a ton of guys and give up a ton of homers, you're going to give up a ton of runs, which is why he has an ERA over 7. He's a 19-year-old. I believe he's a rookie. So maybe there's a future ahead of him, but he has shown very, very little this year. And given that the Twins are on a roll lately, I don't think they'll have much trouble with him. I'd be perfectly happy to play Roberto Ramos in this one, even against a lefty, given how hot he's been of late. And given that I don't even know if Beck is going to be in the game all that long. Nothing in his recent performance suggests he's going to go much more than 5 innings. So I think even a lefty on lefty matchup for Ramos is playable here, given how hot he's been for quite some time.
Yeah, Ramos hitless in his last game, but he did have 2 walks, and that was at the end of a doubleheader, so maybe he was a little tired. But in that first game, hit a home run, 3 for 4, as you can see here. Great batting average since the 26th. Is he now an MVP candidate? I've been waiting to ask this. Is he maybe going to dethrone Mel Rojas Jr. with the late, August, September push?
He's got a shot. What's he done over his last 20 or so? It's OPS well over 1,000, close to a homer every other game for an extended stretch. He's going to have to keep doing this for a while, and Rojas is going to have to not get back to his crazy form he was in for much of the year. But when you consider how hot Ramos was early, by the end of the season, his extended slump isn't going to look nearly as bad. It was 25 games of some quite poor performance. I believe OPS under 700 or so for his first 25 games back from that ankle and back issues. That sent him to the injured list in mid-July pretty briefly, which, was worrisome. That was not at all what we were used to. Yeah, he hit 226, 321, 366 in his first 25 games back. But since then, over 33 games, he's hitting 279. And I just deleted it. Let me grab that again. 279, 353, 639 over his last 33 games. OPS of 992, which that's up there with anybody. If he keeps doing that, which he can do, again, we saw him be even better than that to start his time in the league. There's definitely a chance he's back in the MVP race. He's second to Rojas in homers. I believe he's only about 3-ish back, 3 or 4. So if he keeps that up, yes, 3 homers behind. He's got 29 to Rojas' 32. If he keeps that up, he's absolutely has a shot to be back in the race.
Yeah, I like it. When you look at, him getting on base, it's basically a coin flip, 50-50, 500 on base percentage last, 5 games here. So he's definitely heating up now for this Twins team. Looks like it should be an easy one. Lightning picks here, showing that is it the over? 5 of the last 6 Tuesdays? Are we thinking blowout here because, the Wyverns pitcher is so inexperienced and can't seem to get past that 5th inning?
I do think the Twins will win, but there is a path for a Wyverns victory in that Chen Hyun Jung has not been what he was early of late. In his first 7 starts, he had an ERA of 2.62 and a WHIP of 1.07. But in his last 4 starts, it's an ERA of 6.23 and a WHIP of 1.89, which is not close to what you thought you were getting from early in the year. And the Wyverns do have some good bats in the heart of the order. Jamie Romack, Jung Che, even Dong Min Han is an interesting option at times. So even without Tyler White, they do have something there. Jung had a couple starts where he gave up 5 earned runs, and then in his last 2 haven't been quite that bad, only 5 total earned runs in 11 innings, but 9 hits against the Eagles in his most recent time out. It's 9 or more hits in 3 of his last 4 starts. It's pretty unconvincing. So there's definitely a chance that if that streak continues, the Wyverns could get into a shootout and will have a chance. But I would still side with the Twins, given that they've just been considerably better over the course of the year and they're hot lately. I think even the bad version of Chen Hyun Jung is probably not worse than Sung Gun Baek. So I'll go Twins here, but I think it's pretty comfortable over also, given that I wouldn't be at all confident in Chen Hyun Jung living up to his season-long numbers based on his recent performance.
Yeah, when you look at that, Eagles and Wyverns are supposed to be easy games, not ones where you're giving up double digits or close to double digits in hits. So not too encouraging there. You did mention the heart of that Wyverns lineup. Jamie Romack, Jung Choi, Dong Min Han, not in that order, bouncing around there. But they were a little cold against NC. Do you just chalk that up to them playing the Dinos and kind of being towards the end of the week? Or do you think, they might be slowing down here towards the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, they still don't have a ton of help outside those 2. Just check if it was Romack and Choi cold too. Somewhat.
I think Romack, we can
only a single
look here
hit
on
in those 2.
rotowire.com.
So he got cold over his last 2. So yeah, they're certainly capable of putting up some low numbers. I mean, it's an offense that's 9th in the league over the course of the year and has been pretty much at that point for as long as I can remember. So when they don't get much from the heart of that order, they don't get much at all. But I do think that facing Chen Hyun Jung, unless he's suddenly back to his previous form, that could kickstart their order. It's not like they were bad in their last 2 games either. Total of 9 runs over 2 games is fine to me. So I'd be pretty happy to go over here. I don't think their lineup's that cold, and I think Chen Hyun Jung is struggling. So Twins and over for me.
Twins and over there for this LG Twins SK Wyverns matchup at 5:30 a.m. Eastern. So moving on now, Lotte Giants KT Wiz. Jisung Bae, one of the guys I like in the league, one of my favorite guys, is pitching. Has been lit up recently. Looked good maybe at the very beginning of this year, but now giving up 3 home runs in his last 3 games. Got lit up very recently. So, you don't want to say it's going to be a slugfest, especially when you got the Giants in there. But I don't know. What do you think with base starting for the Wiz?
Yeah, it's not been great for him. 5 or more earned runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. It's an 8.27 ERA and a 1.84 WHIP over those 4, which is not what you want. Over the course of the year, it's pretty unremarkable peripherals too. 15% strikeout rate, 11.1% walk rate. Both of those are about 3 ticks worse than league average. Even when things were going well for him, his strikeout and walk numbers were pretty mediocre. So I don't necessarily have a bunch of faith in him. He is a righty going against a very righty-heavy Giants lineup. That's not a particularly intimidating unit, so it's possibly a chance for him to bounce back. But it could also be a chance to play some of the Giants' decent hitters. Giants don't tend to be too expensive for daily fantasy reasons, just because none of them are elite, but they've got a bunch of playable options in the top half of the order. And given Bay's recent numbers, I think a lot of the top half of their hitters are pretty interesting here.
Yeah, even in that one good start that Bay had against the Eagles back on the 20th, he gave up 5 walks against only 5 strikeouts. So definitely not a lot going on in the positive direction for him. You mentioned the Giants bats that are normally pretty cheap. Dae-Ho Lee, Dixon Machado, looking maybe like more playable starters, especially as the Giants remain in the playoff hunt. Are those the two guys you're looking at, kind of the heart of that lineup?
Asap San was actually the guy that I wrote up for today's cheat sheet. I rate him up pretty often because he's the only lefty who hits anywhere near the top. Sometimes they have one who hits like 8 or 9. So whenever they're facing a shaky righty, San is a guy I like turning to. He's been on a roll over the last 5 games, hitting 444. He's actually got the second highest average among qualified hitters this year with 350, behind only Jose Fernandez. He's a very good contact guy who can also take a walk. Not much power, just 7 homers, but he's a decent mid-priced option, and he'll get the platoon advantage, unlike most of his teammates. So he looks like the strongest play in that lineup for me.
Yeah, he's on that hit streak as well with a couple multi-hit games mixed in there as well. Are you going to go with the Giants because of Bay? Because I know the Wiz offense has, maybe taken a step back because Mel Rojas Jr. hasn't been scorching hot like we saw for that 10-week stretch a couple weeks ago. Is there maybe a room for a Giants win?
Yeah, he hasn't been necessarily the guy we're expecting, though. Becco Gong is stepping up to take the mantle. He's got a OPS of 1268 in his last 8 games. He's got 3 homers in that stretch. He didn't homer for over a month, which is pretty weird for a young guy with his power. But then now he has 4 homers in his last 11, so he seems to be right back on track. He'll get the platoon advantage against Sae-Woong Park and could be playable today. The Park has actually been pretty decent for quite a long time. He was quite poor early in the year with an ERA of 6.08 in his first 8 starts. In his last 10, though, it's an ERA of 3.09, which is just about half of that for Sae-Woong Park. Over the course of the year, both the strikeout and walk rates are more or less exactly league average, each within a tick, which means he's not a particularly exciting arm by any means, but he's a playable mid-rotation option. And I think of the day's cheaper arms on DraftKings, he's one of the more interesting ones, even against a pretty good Wiz team, mostly because there's a lot of pretty shaky arms today. But given that he's been pretty good for 10 starts or so, I do think he's got a chance to beat the Wiz here.
All right, so you're going to go with that for your pick? Are we going to go with the Giants or the Wiz?
I am going to go with the Giants. I'm not super confident in this one. I think the gap in the pitchers, given their recent performance, is about as big as the gap in the lineups, which makes it pretty close to a toss-up. I couldn't argue too strongly if somebody thought that even given Park's recent performance, the Wiz should be able to handle him. But I'm not at all a fan of what Bay's done recently or for much of the year, so I'm going to slightly favor the Giants in this one.
And Barry is agreeing with Lightning picks on that over. These are some mediocre arms, and Mel Rojas and Dae-Ho Lee, both guys that can get hot and hit for some power. You like that over 10?
Yeah, mostly because I don't think Bay is very trustworthy at all. There's a decent chance that Park, goes 2 or 3 earned runs in 6 or so innings. But I think there's a path for that Wiz lineup to get hot against just about anybody. And I would be surprised if Bay has a strong game here, given that he seems to give up 5 most of the time here. So slight edge to the over, although I think it's pretty close there too.
All right, so moving on now, second to last game, we got the Lions and Tigers facing off here. Aaron Brooks returning, or not really a long absence, but he did go down there for a little bit, but back with the Tigers and should be all Tigers here. I'm thinking because the Lions, 3.7 runs per game in their last couple. I mean, they're not doing too good.
Yeah, the only reason to worry is that Aaron Brooks hasn't quite been himself lately, but the Lions haven't been really anything for quite a long time. So I would agree. I think it's pretty clear Tigers here. Brooks has a 5.98 ERA in his last 3 starts, but it's 20 strikeouts against just 2 walks. So I think it would be wrong to get super concerned. He also has that sore back, which I don't know if that was somewhat of an issue that whole time. Could potentially explain some things. It doesn't seem like it was a major issue because he's not even missing a full turn in the rotation. He ended up just getting his start pushed back by like 3 or 4 days. Definitely had some risk, but he's still Aaron Brooks. His season-long numbers are still excellent. And again, even those underlying numbers, the strikeouts and walks have been just fine recently. It seems like balls are finding the holes there with some higher hit totals. But over the course of the season, 21% strikeout rate against just a 4.5% walk rate. It's up there with the best in the league. Not quite the elite of the elite strikeout arms, but 21% is still a pretty good number for the KBO. So I think I'm willing to forgive him a mediocre stretch, which has a pretty obvious explanation in the sore back. There's maybe more upset potential than you'd expect, given how bad the Lions have been for a while and given how good Brooks is normally, just given that, it's not out of the question that he pitches a couple innings and realizes he shouldn't because he's just coming off a back issue. That does add some risk, but I would still side with the Tigers here.
Yeah, I think so. Aaron Brooks, he also might be recovering a little bit from that rough stretch against the Twins there. You can see 3 straight games against them is already difficult when it's a small KBO to begin with, and you're playing the same team 3 times in a row. Can be difficult. Did have that one good start, though, at the beginning of the month against them. But overall, I guess got to appreciate, too, that strikeout to walk number recently. You look at that, 26-2. You don't see too many pitchers with that, especially on today's slate, with those type of numbers. So that's what we're looking at the Tigers. Looking over now at the Lions. Jawook Koo, 3-game hitting streak. Daniel Palka, not much power, but maybe getting acclimated a little bit more now. Anyone offensively scaring you away from Brooks, or is it mainly all internal with Brooks?
Yeah, they don't have much scary. I mean, Heyman Park has been on a tear, at least in terms of getting hits, mostly singles, but he's hitting .516 in his last 8 games. Hard to complain about that. No walks and just 4 extra base hits. That's not nothing. So he's something. They did get Sung-Soo Kim back. He's been out for a bit. That's something. Jawook Koo, if he's hitting like he should, is something. Sung-Soo Kim hasn't necessarily been good since he's come back. 6 games, an OPS of .509. But that top 4 is maybe something if Park stays hot. If Kim gets back to his previous form where he's an on-base machine, .418 on-base percentage this season. Koo has been good at times, and Palka, I mean, he should be good. They gave him one of their foreign player spots. They evidently think he's going to be good. So maybe you could make a contrarian stack out of there if you really want to bet against Brooks' back. It's not the direction I would go, but there's at least a path there. There's some future in which Brooks' back isn't as healthy as he thinks he is, and there's a few decent bats at the top of that lineup, but it's been a pretty bad unit for a pretty long time, so I wouldn't be too worried.
Yeah, like you said, number 8 in the power ranking, so definitely nothing should be concerned about against Brooks, unless he, of course, is not healthy. So we'll see that tonight. Going Tigers, and the consensus line is set at 9 right now. I'm going to think the Tigers are going to pretty much have to do that all on their own. Maybe you get to the bullpen and that explodes, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, assuming we're fine with Brooks' back, it's two pretty weak lineups, so a low over-under does make sense. Chae-Hung Choi had an ERA as low as 3.42 just 3 starts ago, and then he gave up a rather comical 11 earned runs on 17 hits in 5 innings against the Bears back on August 12th. It's one of the fun things about the KBO that you don't really see in MLB these days. When the pitcher's struggling, they'll just kind of let him keep struggling because I guess you've already lost. No need to tire out the bullpen arms. I don't exactly know the logic there. But yeah, I haven't seen 17 hits in quite a while. But he's bounced back with a couple fine starts, or one fine start and then one short start. ERA is nearly a run higher than it was to start the month. So um, even when things were going well for him, that was pretty mediocre peripherals. 17.2% strikeout rate, 9.2% walk rate are both slightly on the wrong side of league average. So he's a competent mid-rotation arm, but not much more than that. Might be all you need against a not very good Tigers team, but he's no Aaron Brooks. So I think I'd side with the Tigers pretty comfortably.
Yeah, Lions and Tigers facing off, and we like the Tigers here. Like you said, comments are always welcome here. AJ, thank you. Outstanding show. And one from earlier, Kendrick, thank you. We love doing the show for you. As long as the league's still going, we'll be here for you Mondays and Thursdays, time and exact date pending. But we got one more game to break down. And this one needs no introduction. You've got the Dinos and the Heroes facing off. Mike Wright flexing that dad strength, looking like maybe an ace if he could keep that up against Addison Russell. Eric, what are we looking at with game one between the Dinos and Heroes for first place in the power rankings?
Yeah, it's huge. They're playing for all the glory of my power rankings, which I'm sure is their primary motivation. They may even care about the standings too. If the Heroes take both of these, they'll be top of the standings come end of day Wednesday. Wright has been decent of late. 3 of his last 6 starts, he's allowed 4 earned runs, though he hasn't allowed more than 4 in any of those. And he's only allowed more than 4 once. He really has not been blown up ever this year, except for just once way back in mid-June. Over the course of the year, he's got a 19.8% strikeout rate, which is a little bit above league average, compared to a 9.7% walk rate, which is a little bit worse than league average. That combination is not necessarily the ace you'd expect to see out of one of your 2 foreign starters, but it's not bad. He's certainly adequate, and he's got a shot against a Heroes lineup, which, as we mentioned before, only ranks 5th in the league in scoring. They're not quite as intimidating unit as you might expect. Not a shutdown arm against pretty good offense. So I wouldn't necessarily expect huge things from him, but he's been pretty decent most of the time. So I think he should, at worst, give the Dinos a chance to win this one.
Over on the Heroes side, offensively, what have they been up to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty deep top half of the lineup. Addison Russell, as we talked about, it's been fine, but OPS in the high 700s, not quite 800. Chung-Hoo Lee, one of the better hitters in the league, but hasn't been quite at his best. A lot of one-hit games lately, which is good for most people, but not for somebody who's hitting 347. He's hitting just 224 over his last 12. Although Ha-Seong Kim, I believe, has been quite hot. Could be a playable option even against Mike Wright. He's hitting, he's got an OPS of 11-11 over his last 11 games, in a nice bit of symmetry there for Ha-Seong Kim. Won't get the platoon advantage against Mike Wright, but is quite a strong hitter. Potential MLB player next year. At least that was the talk before the season, that he might get posted. Does a bit of everything. Hits for power, plays shortstop, hits for average, can steal. Would be an exciting player to see over here if he does end up making the jump. So they have some talent at the top of the lineup. I don't think Mike Wright is necessarily so good that you have to be too scared of starting the Heroes hitters, although there's plenty of weaker pitchers today that I'd be more excited about picking on.
Lightning Picks here notes that the Heroes haven't seen Wright, and of course we can check that here on rotowire.com for the best KBO insight. Check out rotowire.com. Take a look at his game log. Struggled against Hanwha, which was concerning that last time out. So maybe not quite having that dad strength right after the birth of his son. But looking here, I mean, that might be an edge. I mean, it is a small league, and he hasn't faced them. I mean, look, going back to May, is that maybe some edge there?
It could make some sense. It'd be an interesting thing to dive into. Haven't looked at the numbers there on how much worse or better guys do their first time against a team. But that's definitely could swing the tide in what should be a pretty tight matchup. The more interesting thing is going to be what we get out of Jae-Woon Kim and how long we see Jae-Woon Kim. He's basically exclusively a reliever. He's a 21-year-old rookie this year. Just 3 of his 33 appearances have come out of the rotation, and it's tough to really call any of them starts. He had one. Yeah, he's just going 2.1, and 3 innings in his 3 starts. He seems to make a spot start that's really more of the start of a bullpen game. Although it does seem like he's moved into the rotation now and isn't just an opener, because this is his second appearance in a row that's coming as a start. His last start, he threw 3 shutout innings against the Wiz, which that's not bad. 47 pitches. Definitely not a start, but maybe a bit more than an opener there. You generally figure guys can build up by 15-ish pitches between outings. So if he threw 47, he maybe goes 60 to 65 this time, which if he's going well, that's 4, maybe pushing 5 innings if he's really strong. If he's weak, though, it's probably only about 3 innings. The Heroes do have quite a good bullpen, but the pitchers you bring in the 4th aren't necessarily some of your best. So if the Dinos can even just run up his pitch counts early, get him out of the game after 3 or so, I think they'll be in pretty good shape here.
All right, decision time then. Dinos, Heroes, 2 elite teams. Both Lightning and Barry are leaning towards the Dinos, and I'd have to say so too because of Mike Wright. But you talked about that elite top of the lineup for the Heroes, Ha-Seok Kim, Jung Ho Lee, and Addison Russell, can be dangerous as any 3 in the league. Who are you going to pick here?
I will go with the Dinos. I mean, even if Jae-Woon Kim has been pretty good, his underlying numbers really aren't that special. So I don't think he's necessarily a lock to shut down the Dinos for his 3 or so innings. I think you got to go with Mike Wright over a bullpen game, even if Mike Wright isn't one of the most elite foreign starters. He's still good enough, still better than a bullpen game, even if it's a good bullpen. I'm going to take a solid number 2 or 3 starter over a good bullpen game anytime. If the Dinos were still struggling as bad as they were for most of August, I might go the other way, but they seem to be turning things around, even if it was against some bad teams. And man, that lineup can score on anybody. When Sungbum Na is hitting the way he is hitting lately, as we talked about earlier, he's hitting 400 with 9 homers over his last 20 games. I don't think a bullpen game is going to shut that down. I'd be happy to play Sungbum Na today, even when it's lefty on left, because Jae-Woon Kim may not even be in there for very long. So I'm going to side Dinos here. Again, Mike Wright, not elite. If he has one of his mediocre starts, I wouldn't necessarily – I don't consider the Dinos huge favorites even against a bullpen game, but I do think they should be favored here.
I like that there. That's supposed to be a little thumbs down at the right here. Sorry, I'm a little trackpad, not the greatest illustrator here, but I do got a little yay against Mike Wright. Hopefully we won't see the Mike Wright of last start against Hanwha, but instead the Mike Wright against Kia. So that's all 5 games here, right? Aaron Brooks, probably the top pitchers they're looking at. Alcantara there as well, but is coming off his first non-quality start in what you said, 13 games. So what are we looking at in terms of the top games, top 3 picks that we're looking at overall?
I think it's going to be team against the Eagles, team against the Wyverns, and given the way the Lions have been playing for a while, I think we might be entering team against the Lions territory. Their 3 opponents just happen to be either considerably better or having a quite stronger starter. In the Tigers' case, I think when you got Raul Alcantara, even if he's not been at his best lately, that should be well more than enough against the worst team in the league, the Eagles. Chen Hyung Jung, not as good as Alcantara and has been even sketchier lately, but Sunggun Beck has shown just about nothing this year, and the Wyverns are deservedly the second worst team, and the Twins are on fire, so I think that's a pretty easy win too. And then Aaron Brooks, gonna have faith in Aaron Brooks, even though again coming off the sore back and a shaky run. All three pitchers that I'm picking there are coming off some of their worst stretches in recent history, but they're all strong starters, and I'm happy enough to bet on their bounce backs here.
So you're staying away from that Dinos over Heroes pick. I see not confident Mike, right? I mean, he's also one of those pitchers not coming off a great stretch, but still, I mean, you don't think the Dinos can step up here?
Again, I am picking them, but the Heroes have been a better team over most of the season at this point. It really was the Dinos' super early, super hot stretch is what's keeping them a game and a half up. So I don't really think the Dinos are much of a better team, and the Heroes have a strong bullpen. So if you have to do a bullpen game with anyone, they have the best chance. I would still pick the Dinos, but I think that one's one of the tighter games out there.
That's fair, and that's what we're looking at. Bears, Twins, and Tigers as the top picks. Got a little note there. The Wyverns are bad. We are picking the teams against the three worst teams, but it's some pretty decent pitchers going. And that's all we got. I think we covered pretty much any sort of injury notable here, of course, on RotoWire KBO. You can check out the news and then go to injuries to see what's been going on. But I mean, Eric Jokic, should be back soon.
Yeah, not sure exactly, but he is throwing again, and he hasn't really missed much time, so he might only need a bullpen session or two. But unfortunately, by far the most significant note on there is that minor leaguer for the Eagles testing positive for COVID-19. Let's just hope that's the only one, because I would certainly love to keep doing this show for the next 5-6 weeks, whatever the end of the season is. So we've got some really exciting playoff race shaping up, and if it has to go on pause for 3 weeks, I think we'll all be pretty sad. So let's hope it's an isolated case and that they're able to keep playing.
Yes, and keep updated on the league at RotoWire KBO and follow us as well, as we'll be retweeting or posting the latest news. As today's been a crazy baseball fan with the baseball fan day for the deadline and this news. So we'll see what keeps coming out. Thanks for tuning in. Back on Thursday, we will tweet out the exact time and details. But thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.